Hi, I'm Everett. Welcome back to the shop. This is a short video I put together as part of the hashtag ShopMadeTools that's going on right now. It's a bit of a small movement of the creators putting together short videos of some of the various things they've made over the years, just as, in a way, a sort of a small show and tell. So, we learn from each other, but, not a huge amount of detail, just this is what it is, this is what it's made of, that sort of thing. And like Rustinox says, YouTube's a great place to share ideas and, show some of the things we've done. It gives other people ideas too. So one of the things I wanted to show, and this is one of the first shop-made tools I've ever made. I made this in high school. It was grade 10 or grade 11, I think maybe actually grade 11. And we sandcast the frames of these C-clamps in the shop at school where I was at. I grew up in a town where the local mining company invested heavily in the local shop program, so we had sandcasting and all sorts of fun stuff. The jack screw here is made of a piece of round stock that I turned and threaded and whatever on the lathe. This is all, round bar stock, riveted, hammered, peened. This was a piece of, round stock, whatever, I made into the, little foot. I still use this. I keep this in my mechanics toolbox, and I've still used it on a regular basis. So it's, I have to say this is a really cool thing, and it was a shop-made tool. So I'm very thankful for this. And if, on the odd chance, Mr. Morissette, you're watching this, thank you for putting up with me and having patience with me as a, as a teenager. Let's just put it that way. So thanks, man. Appreciate it. You're definitely an inspiration for a lot of us. But anywho, what I'll do is I'm just going to do a list here, some pictures and a little bit of video here and there of some of the stuff I've made over the years. It's not exhaustive. We've all made lots of different things as time goes on. These are just some of the ones that I figured you might find more useful. Now, the first tool I made when I got my lathe was a special little tool for depriming Berdan primed cases. This is for a 7.5 by 55 Swiss. You just basically fill your case with water and use the little punch, and you can hydraulically pop the primer out. Works great. So I can now reload Berdan cases. Next one I did was a tool post nut, kind of like what John Mills has. I saw what he made and I wanted one like it, and yeah, a little bit of bar stock, a little bit of tool steel for the handle, and well, as you see from the videos I have, it's still on the lathe. I sometimes pull out, right here now is these are larger tool holders that I cut dovetails in, like John Mills, of course, got ideas from him. Wrecked a good KEO cutter on it, should have used carbide, but they work, I still use them. And this here is drilling some of the holes in what was going to become the lathe spider for the back of the spindle, the back side of the spindle. That way it can support material going all the way through the headstock. It was just some scrap that I had out of the scrap metal bin. And a little handle I made to tighten up the lock nut to hold it to the spindle. That way I can have longer stock go all the way through. That's the old shop there. This here is a motorcycle clutch removal tool that somebody asked me to make up for them. Had a goofy M29 by 1.25 thread, so I had to make a plug for it and then make the little tools with a little forcing screw in the middle. And yeah, there's a Dodge track bar bolt to use in the middle for the forcing screw, and it worked. Made a few of them for him. And next up was a pushy tool. I used a chunk out of a truck U-bolt, and again, a la John Mills, I've got a lot of cool ideas from him. Made a pushy tool for use on the lathe to align stuff on the face, for aligning stuff up for the face. This here is a chunk of scrap that I turned down and put some features on the front as a New Venture 261-263 transfer case front input shaft or output shaft seal tool. The front output shaft seal is a two-piece unit, and if you put it in wrong, you're going to damage it. You have to push the inner and the outer at the same time. That's what the tool is for. This here is a Dodge 5500 yoke removal tool for being able to remove the yoke from the one side drive shaft or one end of the drive shaft, so you can replace the steady bearing, just like that. Surprisingly, Chrysler didn't seem to have one as a special tool, and it makes things way easier to change that bearing. And this is, well, it's not really a tool, it's part of the equipment. It's a welding bench. As soon as I got my welder, I wanted some TIG practice, and so I took a piece of scrap that I had, and one of my earlier ones, took a piece of some scrap I had, including the top, and wound up welding together a table for the unit. It's narrow to be used as a cart as well as a welding table. It's what I could fit in my shop and the materials I had, including some wheels I got out of a bin. Yeah, they work very well. And yeah, that's what it came out like. And I still have it. It's in the garage. I've moved it here. And those are a couple bolts from an 8HP45 Dodge transmission. These are scooter blocks. They are used with an indicator for measuring differences between the heights of two different surfaces, often used like this on truck engines with the cylinder protrusion, where the sleeves stick out of the cylinders or out of the engine block, so see what your protrusion is. This here is a drill shock tap handle. This is the one that fit my old mill. I got the idea from Chris B from Chris B 257, linked to his channel below, and it's used for, well, starting and running a tap on your mill so everything stays straight to where you drilled your hole. I got to make a new one for my Bridgeport clone because this one didn't fit mine. It went with the old one. This here is a tool I made up from some scrap there. That's a charge air cooler off a 3-liter diesel in a Grand Cherokee. I made a little clamp that's not shown here, but that way we could actually pressure up the charge air cooler system and look for leaks. So that's what that little piece of scrap was for. This here is a tool I made up for compressing the track lock clutch springs in a Dodge track lock rear differential. You have to compress the springs for the side gears in order to get the pinion gears out and to disassemble it to rebuild it. So made one of them. This is a turret tool style tool post for my lathe. I was finding that trying to part it was way too flexible. I was having trouble parting with the standard quick change, so I made this, and it helps quite a bit. I have a couple of things I still want to try. This here is my first foray into Fusion 360 as I was making up a slitting saw arbor, modeled up a 41TE output shaft bolt there for, well, I just used the output shaft bolt, and made up an arbor, and actually it works pretty well. A little bit of run out, but not bad. This here is cutting off an impact socket. I made a couple of these for my buddy who's a plumber. Cut it off, face the ends, piece of steel tubing, and you make an extra long socket. Excuse me. You make an extra long socket. So that's yeah. I made him a couple. He just someone stole the first one, so I made him a second one. This here is probably one of the most used tools I have, and it is an indicator holder for the lathe, for the carriage, and this way. I mean, at some point I'd like to put a DRO on the machine, but until that point this is a nice inexpensive alternative, so to speak, for doing faces, features on faces. This here is the plate I made to attach to the cross slide. It allows me to clamp stuff to the cross slide for doing either face boring or line boring on it on a piece of work, and I've used it a couple times already now. It's kind of a handy little unit. Again, you have to be careful and not take too much at a time, due to the rigidity of the lathe, but it does work. You just have to shim things up. This here is making my first fly cutter, hence why I was using the end mill. But yeah, this is my first fly cutter, and I still have it in the toolbox, and I still use it. Again, another piece of scrap metal out of the metal bin from the trade school where I was doing night school. And this here is the block that became the tool post drill jig. I use this for a few different projects. It's handy. A couple things I may change if I ever modify it or make a new one, but overall it does work. This here is just finishing up welding a lathe dog, making it out of a couple pieces of scrap that I just needed for a project. Yeah, it's a little rough, but it does work. Piece of scrap metal and a chunk out of a U-bolt. I needed it to make this. It's a lathe tailstock alignment bar. I know you can buy them commercially. I'm just too cheap. I made one. This here is, I wanted to make up a clamp to go in the quill of my machine, or my old mill, to be an indicator holder. Kind of like a rip-off of a commercial type, but sadly this one doesn't fit my Bridgeport clone, so it went with the mill to my buddy who bought it, the mill. I'll have to make another one for this machine. And these are sort of tools. I would call them tools. They're weaving tools. I made them for my mom. They're weaving shuttles for looms, like larger looms. And so, yeah, a little bit of wood butchery in there, as John Mills calls it, but they work. This is a stand for the surface plate. I have a 12 by 18 surface plate. This is just some leftover junk and some bed frame that welded together. Works nicely, actually. I can adjust it and level it and get it nice and stable. And this here is part of making or fixing up and heating and hardening a piece of drill rod to make a scribe for a surface gauge that Doug Lester gave me. He gave me a surface gauge there. It was missing a couple pieces, so we fixed it up. Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it. This is making a keyway cutter for the shaper. I wound up making two because I didn't like the first one. And yeah, it worked like a hot darn once I figured out how to actually not make the tool flex. So this was definitely well worth making. Yeah, I was happy with that one. Now this is a Cat C7 rear crankshaft steel installation tool in process as I was peeling all the snarlies away. You know, chip control was sometimes an issue with this one. And yeah, again, special tools for heavy trucks and bigger engines can sometimes be cost prohibitive. So when I was at the shop there, I made a number of different special tools, and this is one of them. It does work quite well. I've used it a few times. And then this is a Packard MX13 rear crankshaft steel installation tool. Started off by, you know, cutting out a piece of plate in the hard way, then cutting out the center, boring it, holding it from the center, drilling all the you know, holes from the outside to line things up, and then I wound up having to press the center portion in at work because my press at home wasn't big enough. So there we go. That's you know, in the process of being used. That's what she looks like. You just have to put studs through those holes like the other C7 one. This is my buddy's combine. It's got an International D436 in it. He was replacing fuel injectors and he needed some tooling for it. So I made him a set of D436 injector removal tools. Grab on the top there, made a little weight, run on the ready rod so you can use it as a slide hammer. So he was pretty tickled about that. I was just glad it worked as well as it did. This here is Volvo D13 injector cup removal tool. That was one of my later videos here. Video was actually taken back in the fall, but I really just released it not that long ago. It does work. I mean, it's, again, you do what you have to do because the commercial tool didn't work like it should have. So I was pretty tickled at how this thing worked out. So this here is a leg off of an IKEA high chair that I pulled out of a dumpster, and I modified it into being used as a thread coil or an extended thread coil insert tool for installing thread inserts in a cylinder head. Had to reach further down into the hole than the original tool would let us, and yeah, nice little plastic insert at the bottom is actually kind of a nice sliding surface for that coil. And finally here I got the Cat C7 injector cup installation tool I made for my buddy at work, and well, we proved it the next day after I made it that it works like it should with a hammer. So yeah, I realized that kind of a quick flip through all these different things. Again, I don't want to make the video go too long, but I also understand that some of the tools that other people have made are way more complex and way cooler. I've just made stuff that I've needed over the years, and I have some other cool ideas that I'd like to do if I get time. I can't make promises, but I have some cool ideas for as time goes on with the shop, especially now that I have more space. Well, we'll have more space once the shop is done. But considering the fact that you just never know where a shop-made tool will go or how long you'll have it or whatever, it's worth putting a bit of time in for some of them to try to do the best job you can. And like I say again, Mr. Morset, if you're watching, thanks, man. Thank you for putting up with me. And for all of you, thank you all for putting up with me and for, all your patience between videos, for all the likes and subscribes. If you haven't subscribed, that's cool. Thanks for coming by. Thank you all for the support, the thumbs ups, the comments, the emails, even just the little notes I've gotten. People, I'm glad that people, for the most part, enjoy what they see happening here. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.